see what we've made so far. So go to render setup and under V-Ray global switches turn off V-Ray override material, and let's unhide our ceiling and hit render. I will pause the video again while I'm rendering. I can already see that our brushed metal material is too dark, and let's cancel the render and let's tweak that material. So let's go to base material first and change diffuse color to something lighter. Okay, let's change Fresnel IOR to 4, and let's bring in more of our metal reflect texture, and let's change this value to 25. And we need to do the same thing in coat material. Make this diffuse color lighter. Change this value to 75 and this one to 25, and change Fresnel IOR to 4. Okay, and now let's select a region here and re-render. Okay, that's good now, and now let's close that up real quick and select ceiling, hide that, select these two paintings, and let's move them down slightly. Okay, and let's move away our school board from island, something like that. And now let's hide everything except our kitchen. Select that light and let's make a 1 copy and push that here. Okay, and we can unhide everything. And ceiling also, and let's re-render one more time. Okay, everything looking good. Let's only maybe change reflection glossiness on our black shiny materials for doors on oven and microwave. Let's change the value from 9.97 to 0.99. Okay, and let's take a real quick look on our floor material. Let's pick that from our model. We have in diffuse slot multi-texture map, and I will provide you a download link for that plugin in reference files. And in our multi-texture map we have simple plank texture with blur turned down from 1 to 0.9, and let's actually bring that back to 1. We have overall gamma 1.1 from 1, and I turned on randomness slightly, and that's it. In reflection glossiness slot we have the same multi-texture map, but I desaturate that texture, and the same one we have also in bump slot. And that's it. And let's take a real quick look on our window glass material. We have full black in diffuse color, strong reflections, fully refractive, And important thing here is make sure you have affect shadows checked here. And that's all for this lesson. In the next lesson we will start setting up final render settings. It will be easier for us to work with one material when we start optimizing our scene. So go to render setup, and in V-Ray, in global switches, turn on override material. Let's unhide our ceiling, and in selection filter let's select cameras, and let's slightly adjust our camera position. Let's move camera away from kitchen and push camera up by 5 centimeters. Now select target, and let's adjust target position, and let's move the target up by 10 centimeters. And let's go to camera settings, and let's hit guess word. Okay, now we can set up universal settings. So in adaptive DMC image sampler we will change max subdivs from 4 to 100, and we can leave other settings as they are for now. In indirect illumination, subdivs on brute force, let's leave that at 8 for now. In light cache, subdivs 2000. Turn on pre-filter and make that 50, and use light cache for glossy rays, turn on. In settings, adaptive amount 0.9 and noise threshold 0.005, and we can render that now. And again, I will pause the video while I'm rendering. Okay, and this is the render with universal settings. As you can see, we have pretty nice and clean result, but if you zoom in we can see noise areas, but overall it's a pretty decent render, and we have 22 minutes and 45 seconds render time on Intel i7 4770K CPU. But I think we can keep the render quality, and we can make a bit shorter render time. So usually when I'm setting up my render settings for my personal projects, my adaptive DMC image sampler max subdivs are usually between 8 and 16, and let's try this one with 10. Let's uncheck use DMC sampler threshold and change this value to 0.015, and now we use for anti-aliasing this threshold instead of this one here. Okay, and I will turn on sub-pixel mapping and select a region here, and let's make a quick render. Okay, as you can see, we have a bit noisier render now, and if we take a look on our global illumination, we have a lot noisier global illumination. Also we have awful lighting and reflections. We have a lot noisier reflections. So what we need to do now is we need to target our anti-aliasing to work only on areas where we need that, and that is on edges of on geometry edges and on high contrast areas like this one. And we need to let our sample engine to take care about lighting, shadows, global illumination, and reflections. So if we take a look on sample rate here, we can see that our anti-aliasing doing a lot of job on area where we don't need anti-aliasing. So first what I will do is I will select a region here so we can compare our progress, and I will go to indirect illumination and I will change brute force subdivisions from 8 to 32, and I will do a quick render. Okay, and let's take a look on sample rate now, and as you can see we have our anti-aliasing have less job to do. So let's try again with more subdivs here. Let's try with 64 and let's re-render again, and as you can see our sample rate starting to be even more cleaner. We starting to get more blue and less green. So let's make one more tweak and let's add 100 subdivs and let's re-render one more time. Okay, that looks okay for now. Let's take a look on global illumination pass, and as you can see we have slightly better results here. We have a bit more noise in universal settings version, and that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson we will start tweaking lights and we will set up material, setting up subdivs for dome light, and let's start with 32 and let's make a quick render. Okay, let's check our raw lighting pass, and as you can see our lighting starting to be better, but we need more subdivs, so I will cancel the render and I will add more samples. Let's try with 64 and re-render. Okay, that looks even better, but we have still too much noise here, and let's add even more subdivs. I will double subdivs number again and re-render one more time. And now we have a very decent lighting. It's something like we had before with universal settings, but let's cancel that and let's add 180 subdivs, and that will be our final subdivs number for dome light. Okay, and re-render again. Okay, our lighting is clean enough, and one last thing we need to do is to increase subdivs on our two lights below kitchen cabinets, and we can switch to materials then. So cancel the render and let's select this light and let's change subdivs to 64, and also on this one. Okay, we instanced that light, so we don't need to change settings on both. Okay, and now let's open our frame buffer again and let's switch here to reflections, and as you can see now we have very bad reflections. So let's go to material editor, and in our basic override material I will increase subdivs to 64 and re-render. Okay, reflections are starting to look better, but still that's not good enough, so let's cancel the render and let's double subdivs and re-render. Okay, we have still a bit of noise here on reflections, but if we take a look on RGB version, we have a very clean render, more clean than before what we had with universal settings. Okay, and now I will go to direct illumination and I will slightly increase subdivs on brute force, and let's re-render whole image. Okay, and we have here a new render, and as you can see we have pretty clean results, and most important, we have 9 minutes and 4 seconds render time instead of 22 minutes and 45 seconds. So let's compare them, set this one to A and this one to B, and as you can see there is no big difference, but render time difference is huge. And here on the left side with optimized settings, you can see here on countertop how we catch light much better. Okay, and here. Okay, and now what we need to do is go to material editor, and we need to change subdivs on every single material to 128, and I will do that, and while I'm doing that I will pause the video so you don't need to watch me how I'm changing the subdivs on every material. Okay, we have one more material left, and let's change subdivs to 128, and I will clean this diffuse color for shiny black material, and we have that material here on doors, and I will change diffuse color to very dark gray, like that. Okay, now we need to select our table, and let's apply oak 1 material, and let's select our chairs, and let's apply oak 2 material and select these 2 chairs and apply on them oak 1. Okay, and before we render our final image out, I will slightly adjust camera position. So let's select camera from selection filter, and let's move our camera here on other side so we can see more room. Okay, let's move camera like that and target. Okay, and now select camera, scroll down and hit guess word. Okay, and now we can unhide everything, go to render settings, V-Ray global switches, and turn off our V-Ray override material. And before we start rendering, I will increase max subdivs on DMC sampler on 14, and I will for final render it took 37 minutes and 20 seconds to render. I think it's pretty decent render time, and in between lessons I've rendered one more version with irradiance map instead of using brute force. So I went here to indirect illumination, and in primary bounces I changed brute force to irradiance map, and here in options I used a high preset, and I also turned on calculation phase and direct light, and I turned off multipass, and that was it. Let's return that back to brute force. Let's close that, and as you can see, irradiance map render was 15 minutes only. It's pretty nice render time, and let's compare these two renders. Irradiance map renders are usually much cleaner, actually with less noise, and we can see that here you can see on this side we have less noise, especially here. Okay, but I kinda prefer brute force over irradiance map, but it's up to you. Now let's save this image. I will save that to render output folder. Let's call that okay, and I will save that as PNG file. And now let's jump to Photoshop. Usually I'm trying to avoid post-production whenever I can, but sometimes I do some small adjustments here. So let's duplicate layer, and I will change blending mode to overlay. You probably can't see that, but change that to overlay and adjust opacity to 30 or maybe 20%. Okay, next I usually add curves adjustment. Okay, add a slight contrast here. Okay, and for last step I usually add hue and saturation adjustment layer, and I desaturate our image just a bit. Okay, and that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time.